In my last video, I was in Beatty, Nevada, headed for Rhyolite. I've had several visits to this area over the years. In the subsequent visit that I made, I noticed a couple things. One is the town has grown up being more of a tourist attraction, and there's signboards now in front of the buildings. A lot of areas are fenced off, and this wasn't always the case. The railroad depot in 1985 was fenced off. My first visit in 1973, you had a full reign of the area with no fencing. You could actually go in some of the old buildings. I don't know if it was safe. But unfortunately, one of the saddest things is the decline on some of the buildings because of people that just have to go in there and put their gang markings and tags all everything. Man, it's just not right for something that belongs to all of us to be defaced. The history of the area, I'll go back to 1904. That's when high-grade gold ore was discovered in the area of Rhyolite. The area became known as Bullfrog. In fact, the actual sample, the ore, it was a quartz vein with a lot of gold in it. Some of the mining camps set up really around that area. Rhyolite was the main one. The Bullfrog mining district was now underway. All of a sudden, the word was out. The word spread all the way from Goldfield to Tonopah, and people began arriving by the thousands. At first, there were 4 daily stagecoaches. That was what was serving the area in 1905. The town of Rhyolite was formed in 1905, and the population quickly soared to 5,000 people. The community became the center of the Bullfrog mining district, boosted 50 saloons, 35 gambling tables, 16 restaurants, a red light district, a weekly newspaper, and so much more. Quite a few of the historic photographs came from that newspaper. It was known as the Rhyolite Herald. It was founded in 1906. One of the interesting things that really boosted the level of civilization, such as sidewalks and electricity and other amenities, was Charles M. Schwab purchased the mining district. This completely changed and elevated the operation, and one of the first things that happened was the Las Vegas and Tonopah Railroad was brought in. Within 1 year, 3 railroads were connected to Rhyolite's new train station. Schwab really put in a lot of improvements such as plumbing. The downtown commercial buildings were built mostly from stone. At one point, they had a hospital, 3 banks, an opera house, an in-ground swimming pool, and for me, the most important thing, 2 churches. Within 3 short years, the Bullfrog Mining District produced about $1 million in ore. That's approximately $27 million today. But what really killed Rhyolite was the high-grade ore began to run out. Several things affected the banks in town. One of them was the banking crisis of 1907. That wiped out the Cook Bank. Also, just a little bit prior to that, 1906, the San Francisco earthquake seriously disrupted the railroads. By 1910, all the mines began to close, and the workers found employment elsewhere. By 1914, the city lost electricity. In about 1917, the final remnants of the city really went away. Finally, the train station was closed, electric lights were removed, and almost all the infrastructure, buildings, utilities, and everything, including the schoolhouse, were moved to Beatty. The schoolhouse is a very sad story of a very short life. The original schoolhouse was made out of wood. It was destroyed by a storm. Then they built the new schoolhouse, which could house the 200 students that were in the school at the time. Unfortunately, the rapid decline of the town meant the schoolhouse was only used for about 2 years. Probably one of the more interesting stories of Rhyolite is the bottle house. It was built by a gentleman named Tom Kelly. He was an Australian stonemason. He was drawn out west by the promise of gold, and when he settled there near Rhyolite, he decided to build a home. The thing he found was lumber was hard to come by, but he came up with a very novel idea. So he realized that wine bottles, beer bottles, and whiskey bottles were real common. At that time, there were about 50 saloons operating in the greater Rhyolite area. So he started collecting these bottles. He paid the kids in town 10 cents per wheelbarrow full. That's about $3 in today's dollars for these bottles. In less than 6 months, he'd collected enough to build a 3-room house. And that house became very, very popular. It almost looked like a mansion compared to what most of the miners were looking into. At this time, Tom Kelly was almost 80 years old, and he decided that rather than live in the house he'd built, he would raffle off the house. So at $5 a ticket, he raffled the house off. The family won that raffle, the Bennett family, and they lived in that house until about 1914. After 1914, the house was remodeled and became a movie set. It was used in several movies. It was used in a movie called The Airmail, a movie that starred Douglas Fairbanks. Later, in around 1932, John Wayne made a Western movie there and called Ride 'em Cowboy. And so the house was used as a movie set. Eventually, the house was lived in by a caretaker, and that was from about 1936 to 1954. Once that time was complete, a family named the Thompsons moved in, and they had a family of 8 people living in this house, and they lived there actually until 1969. Some of the little miniature structures that are on the preserved site were built by the kids in the yard. The MD and LD Porter Mercantile Store was the second largest employer in Rhyolite. They had presence in 4 other areas, and originally they brought in 30 tons of the original contents of their store via an 18-mule train type delivery system. There isn't much that's left of that HD and LD Porter storefront. The ruins were totally impressive, though. It was made out of stone, very long and well-built building designed for the long haul. Interestingly enough, Porter became the postmaster and was there until the post office closed. I believe it was in 1914. They were really part of the area, and they offered everything under the sun like a general store. The Cook Bank building still stands as one of the most impressive ruins in the property around Rhyolite. There are 2 bank vaults that are inside of the building. The original safes were steel, weighing about 6,000 pounds each. The vault holding areas still can be seen. The original post office was moved to this location. It was on the lower level of this building. Very impressive bank building. It always reminded me when I went to Rhyolite over the various visits of something that was neoclassical, something that could almost go back to the Greeks. Um, Probably it had a little Art Deco flavor to the trim around the top of the roof, but that's long gone. What stands now just reminds me of something that you might see as far as Grecian ruins. Again, a rapid rise and a rapid decline caused by the 1907 banking crisis, and then also part of that impacted by the 1906 San Francisco fire and the devastation that that did to the local economy because of railroad service being interrupted. Overbury built this building, and originally it was going to be a 2-story building, but he found out during the construction that the Cook Bank building was going to be 3 stories. So the building was rapidly redesigned to be 3 stories high. It was a general purpose building that had shops. It had a trading floor for commodities and stocks, and it also had a bank inside of it. A very beautiful interior, and it had a centralized vault, which is still standing, but there isn't much left of the beautiful building. Again, most of these archival photos are from the Rhyolite Herald and their archives. One of the big features that still stands that's very impressive in Rhyolite is the train station or train depot. I have had horrible success in getting through the gates there. I know that there's times that they're open. I have not been able to do that in 2017 or in 2023. Everything's been locked up. In fact, in 1973, the train station was boarded up, the doors and windows were covered, and everything was secure. I understand that it's beautiful inside, and very well preserved. One of the things about the Rhyolite Depot is it was used as a casino. I believe that was in 1936. It was known as the Rhyolite Ghost Casino. And then it was actually owned by an individual couple that lived in there. So because of their attention and love, understand that the inside is very well preserved, but I wouldn't know. Somehow I have not had the magic combination of times or coordination with the authorities to be able to see the inside of the facility. But I'll have to take other travelers and other photographers' word that it's pretty impressive. I was actually sticking the lens of my camera through the chain link fence trying to take the photos. If I could have gotten inside, it would have made things a lot easier, but that's life when you're traveling and you don't have a lot of time to coordinate in advance. Well worth seeing that portion of the buildings in Rhyolite. The train station actually outside, there's a old rail caboose. Back when I first visited this area, the caboose was in pretty good condition. It was before the taggers got in and started spraying everything inside with their markings. But it's still a neat area. The depot is definitely the highlight of Rhyolite. And if you're planning a trip, try to find out when the gates are open. It'll really make it a better experience for you. I still enjoyed it. I tried to get there during the evening light.